critical point of a perfect storm. With the collapse of our economy, with more people sick than ever before, more obesity, more diabetes, more heart disease, with the wars on cancer and drugs and AIDS and everything being complete and total failures, when we are manipulated by a political system that has betrayed us, and virtually every major institution has lied to us, they've manipulated us, they've taken our innocence, our honesty, and our trust, and they've used it against us. And for those who have awakened and no longer choose to be manipulated, now we are joining together in common cause, setting aside political differences. That's the old paradigm. That's why we couldn't have done this 10 years ago or 5 years ago, because everybody would have had to have a committee to decide which direction we were going to go before you did anything. The progressive mind says, let's just do it. All right? If there's a wrong, let's correct it, let's challenge, let's educate people. And every day there are more and more people who are awakening to the fact that they're leaders, they're opinion leaders, the Bill O'Reillys, the Sean Hannitys, that these people are not bearers of truth. So they're looking for the truth. A big firm told us, a major firm, oh, we're going to help, you know, vice president of our firm believes this. I said, you're kidding, aren't you? Do you really think the American media is going to touch this issue and be objective about it? Not at all. We don't need the American media. They're so past their expiration date. Selected questions for all of our panelists on what I consider the most important issues that the American media, the American government, the Japanese government, and media have not covered. The first panelist to speak is Greg Pellist. He is best known. This is Greg. Many of you know Greg because he was the one who broke the story of the purge of black voters by Katherine Harris in Florida in the 2000 election. But before Pellist became a journalist, he was one of the nation's top investigators of corporate racketeering. In fact, he directed the biggest corporate racketeering case in government history, of the builders and operators of the Shoreham nuclear plant on Long Island. And in that case, because of his work, a jury ordered the nuclear racketeers to pay $4.3 billion. And as a result, the nuclear power owner, Wilco, was put out of business and the plant closed. I also have Harvey Wasserman, Dr. Harvey Wasserman, at the end of the table. Harvey was on my show today. He is a multi-award-winning journalist, an author, a democracy advocate. He's also been one of the leading voices in the anti-nuclear debate. He, too, along with a small group, caused not one but 2 nuclear facilities to be challenged and closed down. So you got 2 guys who closed 3 plants in the United States. We got the ass kickers here tonight. Then, of course, you've met Vandana Shiva. She is, many consider her the Gandhi of India today, the voice, both as a scientist, as a nuclear physicist, but also the leading voice in challenging genetic engineering. And we have, as you just heard, Eileen Miyoko-Smith. She is the director of Green Action in Kyoto, Japan. She is also, by many of us, myself included, and I spoke with Ralph last week when I filmed him, the Ralph Nader of Japan. And rounding up the table down there is Professor Carl Grossman. He is a professor of journalism, communication, SUNY College. He's been investigative reporting for 30 years. He's one of the most prolific investigative journalists, and he is a major threat against the nuclear industry because he does the reporting. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times do not begin to comprehend, to understand, or to wrap their mind around. He is one of the few journalists that cannot be convinced to tell the official story. He tells the truth.
I want you reading close to this document. You're not supposed to have it. It's confidential. It's from the chief structural engineer at a nuclear plant. And his personal notebook, which I obtained, says, quote, well, they can sue me later. Wiesel was very upset. He seemed very nervous, very agitated. I'm reading from the notebook. In fact, the plant, says Wiesel, is riddled with problems that no way on earth could stand an earthquake. The team of engineers sent in to inspect found that most of these components could, quote, completely and utterly fail during an earthquake. Fraud is as integral a part of a nuclear plant as steel and concrete, Gary. That's what is going on. They lie. That memo was put in front of the jury. The Shoreham nuclear plant earthquake safety tests were completely fabricated and faked. That plant we closed, but I should note this. The builder that faked the official safety earthquake proofing documents was called Stone & Webster. The company, well, we say, so what? The company building every new nuclear plant in America, 4 stations that President Obama has agreed to provide $8 billion to in subsidies, every one will be built by Shaw Group, whose nuclear unit used to be called Stone & Webster. Every nuclear plant, the 9 stations planned for the UK, will be Shaw Group, the convicted racketeers once known as Stone & Webster. And the Fukushima nuclear plant will be cleaned and rebuilt by, no points for guessing, the guys that faked the earthquake tests. The diesel generator inspector, R.D. Jacobs was his name, had written to us in investigating nuclear plants in the US that the same group, Stone & Webster, building the plants today, US, England, Japan, had prevented proper testing of the emergency diesel generators. So we had them opened up at the Shoreham plant. We had them really tested. We tested one within minutes at real emergency conditions. Within minutes it went snap. The second diesel went crackle and cracked. The third diesel within a couple of hours went pop, snap, crackle, pop. That was all 3 emergency diesel generators. Those same diesel generators, they look big, they sound powerful. They are old and often used generators from cruise ships, which leave the dock slowly after their bearings and oil have heated up. They don't work in an emergency. They can't work in emergency. They have 12 seconds to get to 20,000 RPM. They can't do it.
There were 2 analyses about how far the tsunami would go up. One is the Japanese Engineering Society analysis, okay? This is the analysis, the level that was used for all nuclear power plants, okay? And that was the official level that was used by the government. But the earthquake prediction experts predicted that tsunamis could hit a much, much higher level. How does this relate with nuclear power plants? The Japanese Engineering Society, if you look at the committee members, it's stacked with electric utility people. Absolutely stacked with those people. Those are the people that decide that the tsunamis will be very low and can never be high. So what does this mean? This means, one is that the nuclear power plants were deliberately, unprotected by tsunamis. But also, we think that the tsunami deaths have nothing to do with nuclear power. But if those low levels were not the official low levels for tsunami, tsunami prediction, all the people that lived in those areas would have been aware that they are in danger of tsunamis. There would have been preparation for that, but those people got slaughtered because they were told officially tsunamis could never hit a high level like that, okay? I have never seen a single newspaper article in a major newspaper about this, never a single word in the Japanese media.
During World War II, the Manhattan Project, these secret laboratories were set up all around the United States: Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, Hanford up in the state of Washington, Oregon. At the end of the war, after 2 bombs were dropped on Japan, they could continue to build bombs, and they did. They built tens of thousands of them, and even the super, under Edward Teller, the hydrogen bomb. But what else could be done with nuclear technology to perpetuate this vested interest that was established during World War II? GE and Westinghouse, now essentially owned by Japanese corporations, Toshiba and Hitachi. Hitachi's partners with GE in nuclear power ever since 2006. They get their start, as well as Stone and Webster, in nuclear technology as contractors during the Manhattan Project. Important years: 46, 47, 48, and in my books, my videos on this issue, I get into the desperation at these national nuclear laboratories. Nuclear weapons don't lend themselves to commercial spin-off. You can't even sell an atomic bomb to the French or to the English. What else could we do with nuclear technology to keep this juggernaut, to keep this establishment going? And out of these years come the craziest of schemes. Irradiate food, use nuclear devices to blast new harbors in the ground as a substitute for dynamite. Nuclear power for airplanes, believe it or not, rockets, and then comes the most dangerous way to boil water ever devised, the notion of using fission to boil water to turn a turbine to make electricity. Public relations, manipulation of the media, very, very important. But this alliance of big government, big business, big media, have gotten together and on a national level caused 104 death machines, nuclear power plants, to be built in the United States. And we, the United States, have been central to what's become a global menace, a global threat to life. The United States, our Nuclear Regulatory Commission, a lapdog for the industry, has never denied a construction or operating license for any nuclear power plant anywhere, anytime. The U.S. Department of Energy, now headed by one of these, or as Vandana Shiva calls them, nucleocrats, nukies, occultist kind of guys, a man named Stephen Chu, who's out of our national laboratory system. We see in the wake no, it isn't really the wake, it's still happening, Fukushima. It's ongoing. The world is being bathed today, continually, with the radiation from Fukushima. Should the public discover the true health costs of nuclear pollution, a cry would rise from all parts of the world, and people would refuse to cooperate passively with their own death. This is what we're talking about. This is life and death. In fact, I believe those in the nuclear establishment, the nuclear industry, should be subjected to the principles of Nuremberg.
Every decision that is made to spread nuclear tramples on the freedoms, human rights and democratic rights of the people, and we are seeing that in every nuclear plant in India. In the area of Jaitapur, which is where the biggest plant will be built, because people resisted, the government has passed what is called Section 144, which is a Section 144 of the Penal Code, saying no one can gather. All local authorities have resigned, saying you're not allowing us to meet to do our work. We are meeting to resolve we don't want this nuclear plant. And therefore, we will not pretend we have local government and democracy. You have basically created a police state. When there was a march to Jetapur from Tarapur, which is our oldest nuclear plant, everyone was arrested. Former justices have been arrested, former chiefs of Navy and Army have been arrested, trying to participate in solidarity. So nuclear can only go hand in hand with a dictatorship. We refuse to give up our freedoms. That's why we are resisting.
If you want to preserve democracy, if you want to preserve your life, shut Indian Point now. It is doable. We have a confrontation next door in the state of Vermont where the Entergy Corporation has decided that it is more powerful than a sovereign state of the United States. It's trying to renege on a contract it signed with the state of Vermont to shut Vermont Yankee on March 21st, 2012. They're in court trying to stop that shutdown. Everybody in New York should be lining up to march into Vermont and then come back to Indian Point. It's the same corporation which Greg knows so well, Entergy. And we need to, if we are, you know, seeing these people from Japan, how many of you can put your own selves in that situation and see yourself in India or somewhere in Europe talking about the home that you lost, having your children? I have two of my kids here tonight, bringing them to talk about their broken lives. It could happen to everybody in the New York area if we don't shut Indian Point. We don't need to sit here and not do something. The bottom line is if we're going to have a democracy, if we're going to end the tyranny of atomic power, which is really the cutting edge of the corporations, the #1 cause of cancer in this world is the corporation. It is the power of the corporation. When we started in 1973, and we first coined the phrase nukes, people said to us, well, what are you going to do to substitute the power? And we say, oh, well, if we take the money from nukes and we put it into solar, someday we'll have solar power. We also said someday we might have a black president. And now, lo and behold, if you took every fossil and nuclear generating plant off the face of the earth, if we could magically erase them and substitute with currently available technology, all the solar, wind, tidal, geothermal stuff we have, the lights wouldn't blink. We are there. We have the technology. Germany has made the decision. China is in the process of making a decision. Hopefully India will make a decision. The United States pioneered these technologies, and now we've given them away. We've given them away the lead. But the reality is, we are ready to go to solartopia. We are ready to make this transition. We don't need any more major technological breakthroughs. What we need is political and cultural and spiritual will to make this happen. And if you guys go out there and shut Indian Point tomorrow, solartopia will come. So thank you.
The Supreme Court said in the Citizens case that corporations are humans, except that Stone and Webster can't get cancer, right? Now, they give it. Now, here's what's happened to America democracy, irradiated. In May of last year, the president put in an emergency bill for armor, a special bill for armor and protective plates for our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, and because they needed this equipment, including $8 billion for nuclear plants. This is in the emergency war bill, hidden in the bottom. When I did my nuclear investigation and found all this material, that we had a tremendous amount of public material. I still had to get the hidden stuff. But government was on our side. I was part of the government. We did the investigation. Now, I ask my fellows, please turn over the files on the discussions for this billions of our money for these guys. And I got back hundreds of pages of material from the Department of Energy, entirely blacked out. It's quite a novel. That's what's happening. It's the big blackout. Okay. They're they do this in secret. You can have secrecy or you can have democracy. Now, the one thing is, they may have blacked out all the pages, but I got through the mail a package called the radioactive brick with no return address, and I don't want to know the return address, but I found out it was underneath the black lines, guys. Okay? And now plug your ears if you don't want to hear this about your government, but they're lying to you. But see, the biggest lie, by the way, Gary, and the reason why they have to act in secret is not only that this stuff will kill your children, which is not nice, but it will bankrupt you. See, because the big lie is that this stuff is cheap. It's brutally, insanely, madly expensive. Most of my fraud investigations of several nuclear plants were about the lie of the cost. And I gotta tell you right now, the characters in South Texas, Stone and Webster, and Houston Power Line, these guys won over dozens of other power companies to get this easy squeezy from you, the taxpayer, by saying they could build a nuclear reactor for $5 billion, which in nuclear fantasy land is cheap, okay? Except that when I got their internal documents, I see the number 14.2 billion here for 2 reactors.
Solar is now cheaper than nuclear. Even these old operating reactors cannot compete with the new technology of solar, wind, tidal, geothermal, ocean thermal, all that solartopian stuff. We have won that battle. The last blood clot is these old 104 reactors. If you get Indian Point, Vermont Yankee shut, the dam will break, and we'll see you in Solartopia.
It's an honor to introduce our delegation from Japan, the Sato family from Fukushima Prefecture, an organic farming family. Sashiko Sato will be speaking. She is an organic natural farmer for decades at this point, who her farm is located very close to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant.
My name is Sachiko Sato. I come from Fukushima. Fukushima is beautiful land. I am organic natural farmer 13 years.
I am very grateful that I can have an opportunity to speak before you. Thank you so much.
それは本当のことを公表しない。マスコミは私たちのやっている活動を正確に伝えていない。そして世界中にそのことが本当に伝わっていないのではないかと思ったからです。
The government doesn't reveal the truth. Also, the media does not accurately state what we are trying to do. Therefore, I thought that abroad, internationally, accurate information about what's happening and what we are trying to do is not coming out. That's why I decided to come this trip.
私はチェルノブイリの後に、日本に石油が入ってこなくなっても、原発が止まっても、暮らしていけるような、生活をしたいと思って、昔からの知恵や技術を自分が身につけて次の世代へ受け継いでいこうという活動をしてきました。
After the Chernobyl accident happened, I decided something. I decided to learn from time-tested skills of the past so that we could live life into the next generation even if Japan didn't have any imports of fossil fuel or any nuclear power.
自然農といって田畑を耕さないで稲や野菜、雑穀を作り、薪でご飯を作るという小さな本当に小さな農場を家族7人で営んできました。
Our family of 7 lived modestly, cooperating together in we developed a very, very small farm. This is a farm with natural farming where we don't even plow the land. We grew rice, vegetables, and various grains, and cooked our food over firewood.
地震、津波、 原発事故、三重苦の中、それでも生きていけなければならない苦しさ、とりわけ放射能は目に見えないだけに、それを受け入れることはとても辛いことです。
It was very painful having to continue to live in the midst of these three tragedies of earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear accident. The nuclear accident was particularly difficult to accept because we could not see it.
農民にとって農地を離れるということがどれほど辛いことか皆さんにお分かりになるでしょうか。
Please imagine how painful it is for farmers to separate from and leave the land that they held so precious.
原発事故の報道がまだされていない3月の11日の夜中に、私は福島に住んでいる4人の子どもたちを避難させようと決めました。
During the late night of March 11th, without any news about the nuclear accident, we had a blackout, no information. I was determined and I decided to evacuate my 4 children.
チェルノブイリの事故の後に、万が一福島原発が事故になったら山形に逃がそうと決めていたからです。
This is because after the Chernobyl accident, I decided that if anything happened here, I would have them escape and go up to Yamagata in northern Japan.
親として子供の命を守るという最低限の役目をすることができて、私はほっとしました。
I was relieved that I was able to fulfill the very basic duty of a parent, and that is to protect her own children.
自分の子供たちは3月13日に山形に避難させることができましたが、福島には30万人の子供たちが残っていました。
I was able to let them go and escape by the morning of March 13th, but 300,000 children were still left behind in Fukushima.
私はその子供たちを一人残さず避難させたいと思い、校庭の空間占領を図り始めました。
I wanted to help every single one of those children, and so what I decided to do, what I did is I started measuring the radiation levels in the schools where the children went.
その結果、福島県の 75% の学校が放射線管理区域という高い数値になっていることが分かりました。
As a result, it became clear that 75% of the schools in Fukushima had levels of contamination so high that they would be considered radiation-controlled areas.
去年と何も変わっていない美しい風景の中に確実に存在する放射能、そこに住むことができないと判断した人と、住まなければいけない人の間に大きな溝を作ってしまいました。
What was created was a huge chasm between the people who decided that it was no longer safe to live in Fukushima and those who decided to remain.
食品の暫定基準値は1キロあたり500ベクレルです。これ以下なら市場に出回るのです。
They have also set the standards for food radiation very high, 500 becquerels a kilogram. Anything below that can be freely sold anywhere in Japan.
ウクライナやベラルーシの基準値の10倍です。
This is 10 times what is allowed in Ukraine and Belarus after Chernobyl.
低線量被曝の被害もこれからじわじわと出てきます。
Low-level radiation effects will start to appear gradually from now.
県が雇ったリスクアドバイザー山下修一氏は100ミリ以下のデータがないのでわからないと言いながら、今回福島県民200万人のデータを集めようとしています。
Shunichi Yamashita, a professor that was hired as a radiation health risk management advisor for Fukushima Prefecture, goes around the whole prefecture saying 100 millisieverts, no problem, just freely move around, nothing at all. And now what they are doing is going to have health surveys to monitor us as we are exposed to those levels.
すべてにおいて県と国を福島県民にしてきたことは私たちは信用ができません。
We cannot trust the national government or the prefecture government at all, we Fukushima citizens.
中学生になって新しくできた友達と離れ離れになったことが一番悲しいです。小学校の同級生は10人だけで、女子は私1人でした。中学校に入学して初めて同級生の女子の友達ができました。しかし山形に転校してまた友達が周りにいなくなってしまって、原発さえなければこんなことにならなくて済んだのにと思いました。
Being separated from the new friends I had made in junior high school was the saddest thing for me. In my elementary school class, I only had 10 classmates and I was the only girl. When I went to junior high school, it was the first time I had female friends the same age. But because we had to move to Yamagata, again, I had no friends around me. I felt if only those nuclear power plants hadn't existed, things wouldn't have turned out this way.
僕は自分の家の農場で鶏の世話をする仕事とお母さんの経営する事務所でヘルパーとして働いていました。
I raised hens on our family farm, and I also worked as a helper at the daycare center run by my mother.
3月末で僕の働いていた事務所はマイクロシーベルトパワーという高い数字が出ていることが分かり、4月になっても2マイクロシーベルトパワーでした。
At the end of March, the daycare center where I had been working was found to have radiation levels of 5 microsieverts an hour. This is more than 20 millisieverts a year. Even in April, the readings were still as high as 2 microsieverts an hour.
お母さんは 0.6 マイクロシーベルトパワー以上の放射線管理区域で18歳未満は働いてはいけない。当分の間、福島には戻れないと覚悟しなさいと言いました。
My mother told me, people under 18 years of age are legally not allowed to work in areas with radiation levels of 0.6 microsieverts an hour and above. She said, brace yourself against the fact you won't be able to go back to Fukushima for quite some time.
3月末で僕の働いていた事務所は5マイクロシーベルトパワーという高い数字が出ていることが分かり、4月になっても2マイクロシーベルトパワーでした。
At the end of March, the daycare center where I had been working was found to have radiation levels of 5 microsieverts an hour.
事故後、原発のことは調べたけれど、地震や津波に対応している作りがなかったと分かりました。電気が足りないというのも嘘だと知りました。本当のことを教えてくれないのは何のためか。僕たちの命を守るより原発の方が大事なのかと思うと悲しくなりました。
After the nuclear power plant accident, I studied about nuclear power and learned that they had not been built to withstand earthquakes or tsunamis. I also learned it was not true that there was insufficient electricity. Why hadn't we been told the truth? I was really saddened when I thought that protecting nuclear power plants was considered more important than protecting our lives.
The biggest plant planned in the world is a nearly 10,000 megawatt plant in Madhban in a place called Jaitapur, in the beautiful Western Ghats, which the reports on impact say is a barren land, and the reality is it's a UNESCO heritage site. Because of the rich fisheries, the rich biodiversity, and the rich farming. the farmers have absolutely refused to move. So in December of last year, Nicolas Sarkozy came to sign an agreement, $22 billion, with the joint venture between the public sector company Areva in France and our nuclear power corporation. If this nuclear plant was to come up, it would generate 300 tons of nuclear waste, and there's no plan. In the project, there's no plan about what they'll do. And all they say is it won't leave the site. But how it will be managed, nothing. There are other nuclear plants planned in that area, in Raigarh and Ratnagiri, in Sindhudurg, and there'll be a continuity of nuclear plants in what is a seismic zone. But again, the technocrats lie. They changed the earthquake maps, except that they don't realize you don't turn to a nuclear power corporation for seismicity. You've got geological surveys to provide you that data. The nearly 100,000 people have refused to take compensation, even though it was increased from 100,000 rupees an acre to 1 million rupees an acre the last time. The politicians come with the money and the people say, take your checks back. And everywhere the refrain is, we will die, but we will not let this project come up. And after Fukushima, everyone across the length of the breadth of the country is saying no more nuclear plants. And just as it is not very smart to boil water using fission energy, it's not very smart to depend on fission energy when we have so much generosity from the earth, the planet, the sun. We have 17 terawatt potential for nuclear energy, 700 terawatt for wind, and 86,000 terawatt for solar. That's where we should be going. Except that the same people who brought us nuclear power are now offering false solutions to climate change besides nuclear. There's a huge campaign to stop an experiment they want to do in England, where scientists from Oxford and Cambridge, and I think just because they're from Oxford and Cambridge, they can do anything with the planet. They're engaging in what they call geoengineering, sending up pollution to the atmosphere, to the higher levels of the atmosphere, so that that pollution will block out the sun. And they say then we'll have global cooling. And every time I've debated them and I said, but the sun was never the problem. The sun is our gift. And what's going to happen with blocking out the sun? What's going to happen to our farms? What's going to happen to our agriculture? Life comes from the sun. The problem is your pollution, your recklessness, and your irresponsibility. So from splitting the atom to splicing the gene, to engineering the planet through hazardous technologies that create centralized control, externalize risks and externalize costs, and destroy democracy everywhere, hazardous technologies are being imposed on us against our will. Genetic engineering is not doing well. It's not giving us more food. It's not controlling weeds. It's created super weeds in this country. And now they're using another war technology, Agent Orange, instead of Roundup, because Roundup is failing to control the super weeds or the BT crops. And there is an attempt to take control about the entire planet's life through a new convergence of unknown, untested technologies. Synthetic biology, biotechnology, nanotechnology, combining them with information technology. We are repeatedly told the genetic engineers know the safety of GMOs. No, they don't. They had no idea they'd create superweeds. They had no idea they'd create genetic pollution. They had no idea they would push 250,000 Indian farmers to suicide. They're still trying to deny that because unfortunately, big business, powerful technologies, risky technologies, think they can buy their way out through advertising. All they do is put another ad. Nuclear is safe, nuclear is green, GMOs are safe, GMOs are green. But everywhere people are smart enough to know how their lives are being transformed. And they are saying, we will choose which technologies we will adopt in our lives for food, for energy, for every field that impacts us both at the planetary level and at our personal level. Everywhere as far as the nuclear issue is concerned, the voice and chorus is enough, no more nukes. In Italy, they had a referendum earlier this year. The citizens voted nuclear out through a referendum. In Germany, Angela Merkel was going to expand the nuclear program. And then Fukushima happened, a huge mobilization took place. People said no to nuclear and they've had to commit themselves to facing nuclear out. In India, the Haripur plant has just been shut down as a plant. They're not going to build it. And a nuclear reactor in Kudakulam, the Chief Minister Jayalalitha has just announced the next time round when they meet in the regional parliament, they are going to pass a resolution that that plant should shut down. Our work has just begun. On shutting down nuclear, the future is not nuclear. It is democratic, it is solar, it is ecological. We know that's the way to go and we make it happen.